offensive linemen, and we had 5 of them go in the first round. Going to be interesting to see how many go in the first round in 2024. We'll talk about that certainly in the coming weeks and months. The first offensive lineman taken, Paris Johnson Jr. out of Ohio State, OT1, 6th overall. He has played right tackle for Arizona. At Ohio State, he played right guard. Then he moved to left tackle his final year there. Rick has talked at length about how he helped himself at his pro day, Paris Johnson Jr., and we talked about him a few weeks ago. He got up to a strong start. And here's the thing. I'll just read you the stats. He has given up 2 sacks. I went back and watched those sacks. One was his fault. One wasn't. One was against Boya Mafe, and Boya beat him pretty good. The other one was against Micah Parsons, and he sort of split the right guard and right tackle. And I'm not sure exactly Paris deserves all the blame, but he has given up 4 hits, 13 pressures, 13 hurries, 17 pressures, and he's been beaten 7.8% of the time, which ranks near the bottom on the rookies. I think he's hung in there. I gave an A-, despite those numbers.
Sorry.
Rick gave
I apologize.
That's okay. I'm fine with that. And Rick gave him a C. And I know it hasn't been pretty at times, but I think he's not a punter. Like, you go out there and kick the ball. He's got to go up against some of the best players on the other team every single week, and I think he's holding his own.
And that's a great comparison, using a punter and an offensive tackle. I'll figure that out after the show.
Here's the thing. The punter is going against himself. He just catches the ball and kicks the ball. If you're playing right tackle, you're going up against Micah Parsons. You're going up against, they played Washington early on. You're going up against all those guys, Montez Sweat, Chase Young. There's no competition if you're a punter other than yourself and your mental state of the moment that you're kicking the football. That's
that's a great, different point of view, Ryan. But
hey, Rick, can I just remind you that I still have 82 days?
I'm trying. I really am. I am counting to 10 right now.
Well, let me refresh your memory. When we talked in the preseason, you thought Paris got off to a good start. And then when we talked a few weeks ago, you thought Paris was doing okay, and you've gone all the way down to a C. So has it been that bad recently?
I think the effort and energy that he plays with is an A.
Yeah.
I think that the lack of strength in the run game does show up some because he plays with a high pad level. Not that he's not given effort to try to finish, but he's struggling versus strength at the point and cutting off the backside because of his pad level. I think he's gotten worse in pass protection. I think that his technique has gotten worse. And I think he just needs to get back focused on how he was playing maybe during the preseason, going against the Ryan Wilsons of the world that are no longer in the NFL. Right. And when you're playing against real dudes like he's been playing against, to get back and trust the technique that's being taught, because what you do in college, and we're going to talk about it with another young lad coming up here, fine young man, if I may say so myself.
Young lad, I like that.
That he just needs to settle down a little bit.
So
I think pressing, the more he struggles.
Well, let me ask you about that part of it, because he's in the thick of it, and it's sort of hard to reset when you're fighting for your life every single play. You just sort of lean on whatever's working in the moment. So how do you get him out of that mindset and get him back to
it's not working in the moment right now? So maybe trust what the offensive coach is teaching you from technique standpoint, and it may be out of your comfort zone, but start trying to do that, because what you're doing right now is not working as well as it should.
The problem, and me just speaking for Paris, having no idea how Paris feels about this, but maybe what if his concern is that I don't want to get Josh Dobbs murdered back there because I'm doing technique, but I'm not comfortable enough to feel, to be able to pull it off consistently. So I'm just leaning on, let me grab this guy and get flagged or whatever.
And what are the stats that you read? So the thing he's doing now is actually working.
Not great.
Josh Dobbs killed.
I got you. All right, fair enough. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. Yep. No, you make good points. All right. Yeah, I get it. I can't push back too much on the C. He started off strong and he struggled a little bit, but I'm A- is a hopeful A-. Let me put it that way.
Oh my God.
All right. Next up, drafted 10th overall. And this is a guy we talked a lot about a year ago this time, because he was shooting up the old draft boards there because he had a strong season for Tennessee, played right tackle there, had moved over from left tackle where he struggled the year before, but he sort of made his bones last year there. He plays right tackle for the Bears, Darnell Wright. And we talked about him a few weeks ago. I liked him a little more than you did, and it feels like the tables have turned again. I gave him a C+. The technique, and this is what you talked about a few weeks ago, hasn't quite caught up with the player, but you gave him a B. So Darnell Wright, why is he moving up in your mind, and why is he? You don't know why he's moving down in my mind, but I think he hasn't plateaued, but he hasn't made the progress I've wanted to see yet.
Well, I gave him an A as a run blocker,
Yeah,
a C in pass pro. So I'm assuming that's where you took the A and C and divided it up to come up with my B.
B combined.
Yes,
Yeah.
but A, he's been the tone setter up front. He is physical. He is strong. He tries to finish dudes off. He can move well enough to position when he has to hook on outside run plays. He caves the inside down on down blocks. He is a physical presence up front in the run game. Everything that we thought we saw when he came out of Tennessee. When he's struggling, he is very much struggling in my opinion. So, and I know you respect my opinion in
Very much
pass
so.
protection because I don't like his feet. I don't like his technique. Once he gets out of position, if he doesn't win early in the down and get his hands on the rusher, then he doesn't have the foot quickness to recover. He's lunging, he's overextending instead of trying to use his feet to recover, gets out of position. If they get him on either side of his edges, the inside or outside of the edges, he struggles to regain positioning and to finish in pass protection.
That I agree with 100%. I think you're right. Paris, as I mentioned, had 2 sacks. Darnell's given up 6. I went back and watched those as well. Look, man, he got beat by Max Crosby. That happens. Got beat by Montez Sweat. That happens. Zach Allen, the beat him as a 3 technique, beat him inside with hand movement. And Chris Jones beat him. And to your point, he was a little too waist bendy. Like he was getting out over his skis. And Chris Jones, that's not going to work with Chris Jones.
No.
And look, those are against Pro Bowlers. I get it, but those are the guys you're facing every week too. So you got to figure it out. But I take your point. He's getting there halfway, almost 2 months through the season. You're like him as a run blocker. Yeah. Do you feel better about him as a pass blocker or Paris?
They can put them both in a bag, shake them up, and pull either one of them out. To be honest with you.
Fair enough. All right, let's go to a guy that I may be the only person on the planet that still thinks he should have gotten a shot at tackle. Didn't matter. He's actually doing pretty good at guard. Peter Skoronski, drafted 11th overall out of Northwestern, plays for the Titans. He was a lot of fun to watch. Then he had it early on in the season, week 1, maybe week 2. And then he had the appendectomy, and he just came back recently. He looked to be less the player that he was before he got hurt. So maybe that's injury related, and I have hopes he gets back to that form. But he was getting after it before the injury or the appendectomy, and had to have the emergency surgery there. So I gave him a B. You gave him an A. The only reason I gave him a B, again, I'm docking him for not being 100% healthy all the time. So that's those are rules. I'm not veering off those rules, Rick, but I enjoyed watching him play.
Yeah. Well, change your rules. So I gave him an A because in that New Orleans game, he was physically dominating as a guard. And the transition from left tackle to guard was a non-issue for him.
Yeah.
And I saw him have a couple of pancake blocks in that game. He was very solid in pass pro. I really, really, out of all the offensive linemen, when you grade the flashes, and especially in that opener, he was A. Almost, if I knew I could give him an A+ that game, I would have, but it wasn't.
Still can.
No, I can't because it's not laid out in the directions that Debo gives because he's very wishy-washy on directions, and you take advantage of Debo's lack of discipline on how we're supposed to grade these guys.
Can you give Debo a break? Philly's just lost. Hey, can I mention quickly in that Saints game, another player flash for the Saints that I'm excited to talk about. I haven't watched closely yet.
Go ahead.
Mr. Brzee.
Yes.
Mr. Brian Brzee. So that was fun to see a couple flashes from him. So we'll talk about him next week, but I want to get that on there because I didn't love the way he played last year. He had a bunch of reasons why. So I'm good. I'm happy to see him playing flashing as well. So anyway, continue with Peter.
So when he came back, he hasn't been as dominant. And a lot of that, when they open your stomach up or whatever they do to get rid of his appendectomy or whatever.
You're a doctor. Tell us how it works.
So actually you cut him wide open from the neck all the way down to the groin to go in there and get that appendectomy. It takes some time to recover. That's the way I would have done the surgery.
Right. His career would have been over.
Yeah. But I think as he gains his strength back, that he will get back to what we saw in the New Orleans game. I guess I know we're not making comparisons here, but the guard that he reminded me of was Zach Martin,
Oh,
Dallas. I think
that's high praise.
think he's going to be that good a player at guard.
Oh man, yeah, he was fun before he had the appendectomy there. And I mentioned Paris was giving up pressures at 7.8%. Peters at 1.9%.
He's a good
playing
player.
a different position, but still, he's been fun to watch, and hopefully he gets back to full health soon. All right, let's go to my guy, Broderick Jones, left tackle for the Steelers. They traded up to get him at 14th overall, third tackle taken off the board. And he's only started one game. That was the Ravens game because Dan Moore was out that game. And we talked about him in the preseason, and he looked a little like he needed to get a little stronger in pass protection. I thought he held his own in this game. I was pretty impressed with the way he played. I gave him a B just on that one start. Is he better than Peter Skoronski? No. He hasn't played as much. They play different positions, but I gave him the similar grade just because of the lack of reps. But I was happy with the way he played. You gave him a B dash.
Well, it's a dash because I couldn't quite get the cursor over there to try to make that a red.
So what did you want to say, dash Spielman?
The Houston game that I watched he played in, he was a little bit of a fish out of water.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when a rookie comes in, especially the first time they're going to get significant play time, they revert back to what they did in college because that's their comfort zone. And, he was all over the place technically in the run game, although the energy was there that I like to see. And he was really out of sorts in pass protection, just trying to use his athleticism instead of the technique. Then the next game in which he started, to me, it was a night and day player. You seen, okay, I got one game under my belt. I'm sure the coaches corrected him during that week. And he was playing with a lot more discipline with his technique, a lot more under control, looked more patient, still was aggressive and tried to finish people in the run game. A lot better in pass protection. So I saw a significant jump from the Houston game to the next game was
Ravens.
The Ravens, and they have a pretty good defense. They got one of the top defenses in the league right now. And I think if he continues to start, he's just going to get better with time. But I don't know if he's going to continue to start or not, which is bizarre to me because he should be playing.
I was going to ask you that. So they beat the Rams last week. Dan Moore returned from injury. Steelers fans were wondering what was going on there. And I was going to ask you, so if you have your first round pick who appears to have his feet wet enough to understand what's expected of him and to be able to do it at a relatively high level, and you have the fourth rounder who's a veteran in year 3 or year 4, whatever year Dan Moore is in, you're willing to roll with Broderick?
Well, the coaches are usually going to go with who they trust the most. And that's their comfort zone, that they know they know who's going to be able to adjust to pass protections, even though he may not be as talented. But the nature of coaches that I've always been around is they're going to go with the veteran that knows what to do.
Right.
So they're
conservative by nature, typically coaches are.
Yes.
Yeah. I will say one of the plays that stuck out to me wasn't Broderick Jones blocking anyone in that Ravens game. They ran an end around to George Pickens to the right, and left tackle Broderick Jones. If you weren't paying attention and you looked up, you would have thought he was running an over route as a tight end. He was 40 yards down the field, running what looked like a 4.75, leading the charge. And that you appreciate the hustle. And you talked about how he played with high energy in the previous game when he struggled. But that gets your attention when you see someone moving like that in space with that sort of athleticism who is only going to get better. And that play, more than anything else, stuck out to me.
Oh, that's good. You're very observant. And I appreciate you pointing out that play because that is something the average evaluator would not have noticed. But with your expertise and your film study, that you brought out a play that would indicate what type of athlete this offensive tackle actually is.
Would you call me an evaluator plus or an evaluator minus?
We can't use plus or minus.
I
didn't say it in Debo's instructions. A, B, C. I'm looking at the email right here.
I think you keep forgetting that I have 82 days. That's all I'm saying. All right, last on the list, but not last in terms of how he's done so far this season. Anton Harrison, out of Oklahoma, 27th overall, OT4, went to the Jaguars, playing right tackle, and playing at a pretty high level. You gave him a B, I gave him a B plus. I think he keeps getting better. Look, he struggled against Chris Jones again, but I said that throughout the course of this conversation about whoever's matched up against Chris Jones. That's going to happen. If you're a right tackle, you prefer him to be playing inside, so you don't have to worry about it. But he played a little 5, a little 7 technique a little bit against the Jaguars. Other than that, I thought he showed improvement. I think one of the concerns we had with him coming out was his strength at the point. He looks like he's playing pretty strong, both in the run and in the pass. So I liked Anton. Like I said, B plus from me, B from you.
Yep. And like Paris Johnson, he was a left tackle that moved over to the right side. And I think he has taken a step further along in his development than Paris Johnson has at this point. I've been a little surprised at how effective he's been run blocking. There's no question about the athleticism. You can see how he moves in space. He still has a little high pad level at times, but he's finishing in the run game. And all these tackles, rookies are going to struggle in pass protection. But if I had to pick between him and Paris Johnson, I would say that he's been more consistent in pass protection than what Paris Johnson has shown to this date.
Okay. No, that's fair enough. And this isn't a final grade on any of these players, just what we've seen through the first week and a month and a half, 2 months. So I think it's a good start. And
thanks, bud. I appreciate the words of encouragement.
I was talking to the listeners and viewers just about where these players are, and if the players are listening. I don't want them to think that we're down on them.
Oh, okay.
We're high on all of them. Rick may not be. Puka Nacua, Rick does not like. Everyone else, I think Rick is okay with. I think Rick likes everyone else. By the way, Debo, Rick is willing to put Marvin Harrison Jr. into the Hall of Fame without playing an NFL snap. But Puka Nacua, he has made it quite clear, is not yet a Hall of Famer. So imagine that, Rick.